Hello, everyone. So, welcome to Module Two's first lesson. We've talked about so far the history that led to the American Revolution and how this history affected the institutions which govern us to this day. In particular, let's review really quick the history of our bicameral legislature. Remember that this is a product of two different factions in the post revolutionary environment. Small states who were very concerned about being overwhelmed by big states who had different interests, they had different goals and different concerns, and big states who were afraid that they would give small states more power than, quite frankly, the big states thought they deserved. So this has led to the creation of a two-chamber Congress. Now, what you see here is the Congress building. This building actually houses both the House and the Senate. It's an enormous building, and hopefully you get to visit one day in a non-disruptive, non-insurrection way. So I want to begin with this question for you guys. So, Congress has been referred to as the most hated branch of government. Congress's approval ratings, which I'll show you in the next slide, are almost comically low. It's almost funny. So, in a 2013 Politico poll, they actually asked, or Politico, excuse me, they asked, do you approve of X more than Congress? And there were 13 results that had higher approval ratings than Congress. A few of these, roaches, had a higher approval rating than Congress. Root canals, a higher approval rating than Congress. Nickelback and Brussels sprouts. So I actually like Brussels sprouts. I think they're very good grilled. The rest of this kind of surprises me. I mean, Nickelback is it's kind of a meme, right? It's kind of funny, right? But these other things, not so much. So why is it that people seem to like roaches more than Congress? Remember, we have to remember how important Congress is in terms of checks and balances. This is the branch of government that most directly represents you. This is where you have the most say. So you should feel represented by Congress. And that's your discussion question this week, by the way, is do you feel represented by your representative? And I would ask you to Google Mark Takano, maybe Google his connection to RCC, and figure out if you feel represented or not. So is Congress misunderstood since it serves such an important function? What is going on? And just look at these approval ratings from 2016. So we see a few bumps in Congress's approval. There's this bump after 9/11 where government just really benefited from historic approval ratings. You see a slight bump after the inauguration of Barack Obama, but that pales in comparison to this 84% approval rating. And then look at this. Regardless of which political party controls Congress, it seems approval has not recovered in any meaningful way since 2009. So, what's going on there? Ask yourself that as we go on. I am of the opinion that this is actually reflective of the American electorate. It's not reflective necessarily of the people that we put there. So what I mean there is we've got characters in Congress, right? And if you're news savvy, if you're plugged into news daily, you probably know a few of them. You probably know Ted Lieu out in Santa Monica, I believe is where his district is. You probably have heard of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Maybe you've heard of Katie Porter. You have these characters who seem to be framing themselves and are framed by their voters as quote unquote fighters, right? So I would ask you, is it good that American voters are sending people to fight in Congress? Does that actually help anyone? And why is it that Congress people tend to be punished for trying to work across the aisle, which is critical to getting anything done? These are tough questions, but it is something to think about, something to chew on, and then think about what your role as a voter is. Do you want to elect someone who is going to fight for you, or do you want to elect someone who is going to get stuff done for you? Is that mutually exclusive? Are there some things worth not giving an inch over? These are the questions that you should ask yourselves. Now, what powers does Congress have? Congress was made very powerful by the framers. Congress is the branch of government responsible for writing laws, for legislating laws, for coming up with legal agendas, and in particular, and important to that, is this elastic clause. Which, remember, the elastic clause says that whatever Congress needs to do in order to govern, they can make a law. That means Congress can make any number of law it wants. It could create 110 million laws. The only limit would be on how fast they could approve these. Now, how is Congress limited? How is it constrained? Because remember, checks and balances also are very much at the forefront of the framers' concerns. So, as I said at the beginning of this video, the first major constraint is that Congress is bicameral. It has two chambers. And there are special provisions that prevent Congress from doing some wacky stuff. So Congress cannot grant titles of nobility. This is something that the British legislature did, and the framers were not too keen on that because they thought it would lead to this permanent, aristocratic class, and it cannot suspend habeas corpus. The president, however, can. Congress is also surrounded with these competing powers. So, what does that mean? It means Congress is put between the Supreme Court and the presidency. And often, by design, Congress is at odds with at least one of these branches. So, referring to this product of two chambers, when you talk about someone who is in favor of their congressman, they're probably talking, or congresswoman, or congressperson, they're probably talking about their representative, their House of representative. They're probably not talking about their senator. So each district has one member of the House. There are a total of 435 members, and every state has two senators. So let's just go here, and this is a picture of the Senate. It's very kind of actually intimate, right? Like you have all these, and I should say this is a painting. You have all these desks, and it's just like a 100-student classroom, right? And usually the house is much, much larger. So let's stop this video, and we're going to pick up here in the next video.